Welcome to the Mindful Warrior podcast. My name is Nate Jackson. I'm here with Eben Britton, my co-host, and we're being produced here by Jed Bauer. And on today's pod, we're going to talk about pain and we're going to talk about injury. This is something that every human being on earth deals with, pain and injury. And as football players, well, we made a living out of it. And so we want to come talk about that today. By the way, Eben, how you doing today, man?
I am doing great, Nate. How are you?
It's pretty good. It's hot outside.
It's hotter than a bitch in the valley.
Yeah, and we're over near the ocean here, which is a lot better.
It's nice.
Yeah, but it's even hot here.
It is hot. But it's beautiful, man. It's Southern California.
Summertime.
You get the sun, summer. I mean, it doesn't get much better, man.
Summertime.
Huh?
So when you were a kid in the summertime and you were out playing, what would happen when you'd fall out of a tree or fall off your bike and cut your hand or cut your knee? How would you react to that? Crying?
I did. I cried.
Yeah.
I was a crier.
Were you?
Yeah, I was.
I can see that.
Yeah, you know, I'm a big sensitive guy.
Right.
You know, sensitive and soft, two different things.
But also tough and large.
Yeah, exactly. You know, when I was a little kid, I was a crier. I remember one instance in particular that was a pretty traumatic impact fall for me. I was on my skateboard. I was heading home late. I was probably seventh grade, after school. Sun is going down. I'd been at school late, hanging with some buddies, and I'm skateboarding home and I hit a fucking stick or a rock, and the wheel, one of the skateboard wheels hits that, and I went fucking flying face plant. I think my eyebrow and my cheekbone were the first two things to hit the cement, and I skidded for about 3 or 4 feet on my face. And I was like so fucked up and confused and pissed off because I had heard that sound. It's that slow motion thing, man.
Yeah.
It was like, and like the grinding wheel on the cement, me flying through space in slow motion. Next thing I know, my face is just grinding against the cement. And I got up, I kind of dusted myself off a little bit pathetically, and picked my skateboard up and walked my way around.
So nobody saw it happen?
Block. No one saw it. No one saw it. I felt, hideously ashamed and pissed off and
ashamed. So much of how people react to falling, especially kids, is whether there's someone around to see it and how those people react when they do see it.
Yeah.
And you were all alone, so you had to kind of categorize it yourself.
Yeah.
So did you cry?
Yeah, I think I cried the entire walk home.
Were you bleeding out of your face?
I was. It was bleeding. It was hot. It was just stinging. And I got home, went and I don't know what happened after that. Fucking went and got, I don't know if it wasn't bad enough. I had to go to the emergency room or anything like that. Got some hydrogen peroxide going, patted it down. Eventually, it was all right.
They give you any Vicodin or Percocet or anything like that for the
pain?
pain?
No pain pills.
So wait, you're telling me you were a little kid and you were able to deal with the pain on your own without drugs?
I was able to deal with it. It was a pretty traumatic fall too. And shit, man, there was nothing like that. It was literally a paper towel covered in hydrogen peroxide or something like that. Wiped it down, showered up, and it was kind of moving on.
Right. For me as a kid, most of my strongest memories that I have as a kid, the youngest memories I have were falling from high places, landing on my face, getting stitches, or watching other kids fall, or some kind of traumatic fall.
Yeah.
I got 4 stitches in the bridge of my nose, got 11 stitches in the top of my head, got another stitch in the top of my head another time. I was a really reckless kid.
Always, you were that kid.
I was that kid. I was always had holes in my pants, scabs on my face, on my knees.
Yeah.
Like there's pictures of me as a little kid with just like scabs on my forehead, like black eyes.
I love it, man.
Yeah. And I think that, like, you know, as kids become rough or show themselves to be either rough or not, that's what kind of ushers some kids onto the football field.
Yeah.
Or into certain areas, certain sports. The kids who don't like that kind of contact, who don't like bleeding, are not going to really be football players. Or at least it didn't used to be that way. But now, the way the game is marketed, I feel like the game is being sold to kids as something that every kid should be doing if they're worth a shit. And so you have all these kids on football teams who really shouldn't be out there sometimes. But that's a totally different subject. But like, so when you went to high school, is that when you first started playing football? Is that when you first started playing organized sports, is in high school?
Yep. Freshman year. I played some Little League baseball before that, but freshman year of high school was the first time in tackle football, putting on the pads. And I was very fortunate in my high school career.
How big were you in freshman year?
Fuck, my freshman year, I was 6'3", 220.
Because right now you're 6'6"? Is that right?
6'6", 250.
250, and you got abs now, but you didn't used to. You were up to, what, 330 pounds or 20?
Yeah, 328 was my heaviest in the league.
Right.
So I started my football career at 6'3", 220, determined to play quarterback. Like,
that's what I am right now.
Firing missiles into the receivers, into these kids' backs, and being like, what the fuck, guys? Why aren't you catching this shit? And, after a week or so went by, the coach and that 40, I think we talked about in episode 1, was like, a 6'3", 40. And they're like, your talents might be a little better suited somewhere else. You might want to think about offensive line. So I did. So I shifted to offensive line and didn't really, embrace the love of that position until the pads came on. But, really through that high school career, I suffered very little injuries, no broken bones. The one thing that really started happening a lot was this subluxation of my right shoulder. It would just slide out of the socket and back in. And that started my freshman year. Just from hand-to-hand combat and all the shit that linemen do and experiencing that. And you know what? I never took maybe I took a fucking Advil.
Yeah, I don't remember taking any.
I don't think
nothing.
I took anything, man. No. It was ice. It was a lot of fucking pain. And it was a lot of this shit. These, armband exercises, 20 at a time, out and in, and strengthening the rotator cuff and all those tiny muscles in there to get my scapula pulled back and keep that shoulder as strong as possible.
But you weren't taking any drugs to deal with the pain?
No drugs.
So the assumption is that high school kids don't need any drugs for the pain, but adults do, and which is kind of fucking backwards.
It's weird.
And I didn't see any pain pills around. I didn't see any pain medication around in high school or before that. My first football injury was a concussion my freshman year. Actually, that was my only football injury, was that one freshman year concussion. And I happened to smoke marijuana for the first time a month prior to that first concussion. What we're learning now, which was cool about what we have learned on this cannabis journey, is that actually it's protecting your brain when you go into these combat situations. It's a neuroprotectant, and so if you're going to be headbanging every day, you're actually protecting your brain to be ingesting marijuana.
Yeah.
I didn't know it at the time. It was instinctual. We've talked about this before.
Yeah.
There's an instinctual thing that happens when you reach for that plant. Once you introduce it into your body, you know that it's there, and when you get hurt, certain types of injuries, you just tend to go there.
Yeah. And the more science you learn, the more you're like, oh, it fucking makes sense. I have this whole system in my body, this endocannabinoid system, that's communicating with the cannabinoids of the marijuana plant or the cannabis plant.
What do you mean communicating? Well, are they writing letters? Are they texting?
Communicating, I guess, on the simplest level of, a receptor and a
lock and a key type of thing?
A lock and a key, and they connect and a message is sent, which is, in this case, feel better, heal, allow your, triggers all of these hormonal processes that get us into homeostasis or, feeling normal, feeling balanced. And I think that is very instinctual. And once you cross that boundary of, oh, this is some like really scary counterculture thing that, I don't know, Bob Dylan and Jimi Hendrix talk about, but I don't really want to do it. So, you could break
what
from
voice
that.
is that? Who is that person? I want to meet that person. That's cool. But yeah, there is a separation between recreational and medicinal, right?
There is.
And when we talk about it,
legal separation and, philosophical separation, I think.
The philosophical is what's interesting to me because we often talk about, I get asked this question a lot when I'm talking about cannabis. It's like, well, were you using it recreationally or were you using it medicinally? And I both.
It's an interesting question. Yeah.
Both. They're the same in a lot of ways. Who's to say that something that starts off as a recreation can actually be medicinal, can't be good for you?
I agree. Well,
exercise, for example, as kids, we do this recreationally, right?
Yeah.
We don't do it because we are trying to medically improve our bodies. We're playing because it's fun. It's fun. It just so happens to also be good for you and make you live longer and make you healthier.
Right.
And so where do we kind of draw the lines between recreational and medicinal? And a lot of the ways in which the authority has tried to kind of tamp down NFL players or professional athletes' use of marijuana is by saying, yo, you just want to get high.
Right.
Come on, don't you know? Don't you understand how lucky you are to be playing here? You can't get high. You can't have fun, man. You've got to take this seriously. And I believe that the guys who do use it are actually taking it very seriously. Yeah. I know I was. I wasn't doing it because I wanted to have fun. Yeah. I was doing it because I wanted to feel better.
Well, look, at the end of the day for me, I know we're jumping ahead of our itinerary, but... looking back, I'd come home, and I could smoke a joint, man, and it made me feel better. It relieved all of these different things, the physical, just pressure, you spend a day out in the sun, you fucking lifted weights for an hour, you've been smashing into, your teammates for another 2 hours. You get home, you've had meetings all day, you're fucking exhausted, right? Every part of you hurts. I just collapse on the couch, man. Fucking nearly immobile. That's how tired you are. Every bit of you is exhausted. And I remember being able to smoke a joint was full physical relief. It was this calm just would wash over my body. And I was also emotionally relieved. I was also, psychologically being refreshed. My mind was being kind of refreshed. And it's no wonder, because all this shit that we continue to learn about it, the science that keeps coming out, like you were saying, and how does that, I did it because I enjoyed it, yet, like you're saying, where do these lines blur of whether it's recreation or medicinal? And I don't think that there really is such a thing as recreational. And maybe these are just two labels that our society is, created to put boundaries on things. But in reality, like you're saying, I think a lot of guys are coming home and doing it because it's something that makes them feel good.
Right. And it allows them to rest.
You can't come home and drink a bottle of alcohol and fucking go back to work and play football the next day.
Right.
No guy is coming home excited. Well, some guys are probably coming home excited to do that, but, that's not doing anything for them athletically.
No, they're not going to be around long if they're doing that.
Right.
You don't really see any 12-year veterans who are alcoholics.
Yeah.
Unless it's a quarterback or a kicker, guys who don't have to run and bang, guys who are protected in a bubble by other guys who do have to bang. There's this thing that happens in sports where the athletes who are the best in the world at the sport, they are idolized and worshipped by people around who control the sport, but they're never kind of looked to lead on the advancement of the athlete's body, the way we view medicine, the way we view what it means to make these plays or the concept or the strategies. The athlete's mind is always just, hey man, shut up and play and do what we tell you. Run these plays, take these medicines that we approve, do all this stuff. Meanwhile, the athlete's body is evolving more completely than the rules that kind of hold them back. And so the athlete who is finding out that marijuana, cannabis, is beneficial,
And it's not toxic.
And it's not toxic, and it allows him to keep going and allows him to do it the next day and rest well and eat well. All that stuff is being thrown out the window because, they just want to get high.
Right.
Because they don't have the words to articulate why it helps them.
Right.
You know what I mean? And so athletes are kind of kept in a tiny little box where they're never given the tools to get out of that, to explain why they do things or to demand better treatment or to say, hey, let's think about this idea. But
it's like, I think my wife is part of this group on Facebook. It's all these wives of former players, over like 2,000 women. And their stories range from just heartbreakingly tragic, these guys that have killed themselves, to, my husband's, starting to show signs of dementia. I don't know what to do. And, it's a community of women looking to help each other, really. If anybody wants any info on that, you could shoot me an email directly at edsbritton@gmail.com. That's E as in elephant, D as in dog, S as in snake. Britton, Britton @gmail.com. Sorry, just want to throw that out there. But, sorry, I had a point with that.
We can get back to, we can backtrack and talk about our injuries. What we were gonna, or did you want to say something?
There was just something specific on that of,
we'll get back to it.
Yeah, we'll get
because
back
what
to
we
it.
wanted to do was trace the line of pain and injury from being a child. When you fall, you get hurt. That's life. You get up, you dust it off, and you go back into life. You don't take drugs to feel better, and you don't feel sorry for yourself. You go back out there and live. And then you get to start playing organized sports, and injury becomes part of organized sport. And not only does the injury affect you now, it affects the team. And so now it becomes a political process. Being injured is politics. High school, not so much, because the injuries aren't as common and the pressure's not as great. I didn't get hurt at all in high school, except for that first concussion. College is when you start to see it. You went to a bigger school. You went to University of Arizona.
Yep.
And I went to a tiny Division III school, so there wasn't a lot of pressure. Did you have any major injuries in college?
I didn't have any major injuries in college. The shoulder continued through college. That was kind of just this annual thing. It happened, a few times throughout the year, and I'd just be dealing with it every single year.
Were you medicating in college?
No. I was consuming cannabis. If towards the end of my college seasons, there was an occasional Aleve, there was an occasional Advil. It was never any opiates. I don't remember anything like that. I've heard stories of guys from other colleges. They were already getting Toradol shots. I never saw any Toradol at Arizona. I didn't have any severe injuries. I was very lucky. The shoulder was it. I suffered my last training camp there. I got this osteized pubis. Have you heard of that? It's like
Never.
It's a it's
trying
a
to think of a
sports
joke
hernia.
for that, but okay.
It's a sports hernia.
Yeah.
So basically, you've got your pubic bone is like made up of two bones connected by a piece of cartilage in the middle. And you've got like your iliac crest or like your hip bones, and then it goes down in this thing that's right behind your dick. It's this piece of cartilage, and mine got twisted out of whack on this really weird play. I was kind of in a lunge, and this D end hit me from the side. He was crashing down, and it was like an outside zone the other way. He crashed down, I got twisted, went down. It knocked my pelvis out of whack, so it triggered this osteized pubis, which is severe inflammation right there in that little piece of cartilage where the those two halves of your pelvis connect. And so it felt like anytime I was running, it felt like I was giving birth. It was fucked up.
Wow.
So I missed a couple weeks of training camp for that, but I wasn't taking any like crazy medications. It was just like, okay, here's a treatment plan. Here's a regimen of exercises we're going to do that are going to, gradually strengthen everything around that area. one of the things I could have done was taken an injection straight to the dick. I didn't want to do that.
Hot beef injection.
Yeah, would you want that?
No,
I don't think so.
It depends on the night, but no, usually not.
And so, it was it was handled really well. I'm not to say that, shit in the NFL isn't handled well. I mean, it is there is a fair amount of shit. But,
it's complex the way it's handled. But
yeah.
You do get access to the best.
Anyway, long story short with that was my worst injury in college. And, it wasn't ever a pill party. It wasn't ever like, opiates or there wasn't that much. There wasn't anything being handed out. It wasn't, guys weren't pressured. It was handled with physical therapy.
Yeah.
And whatever that, I guess that there's a range of that. And so at Menlo, I mean, what was it like when you got injured? How was the training department?
Well, we were a school of 600 students total on a good day, and we had about 100 guys on our football team. There was not a big budget, and so it was, kind of as you would imagine. There's not a lot of resources there, and when you would get hurt, we'd go to the training room, and we had a great trainer with a couple good assistants, but we didn't have the time or the energy or resources to be able to spend a lot of time in there getting fancy recovery stuff. So it'd be ice and stem.
Right.
Ice and stem, or get in the cold tub.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Get some ultrasound. Ultrasound is good too. Some heating pads.
Yeah.
Tape.
Heat it, tape it,
and that's the extent of it.
Ice it.
Yeah. The injury that bugged me most in college was my shoulder. I dislocated it in my junior year there, and then it popped out again my senior year.
Shoulders are a motherfucker.
Oh,
man.
Dude, they couldn't get it back in, which was a really
I've
bad
been
thing.
there.
Yeah, the first time it popped out on the field, and they got it back in on the sideline. But then the next year when it popped out, they couldn't get it back in. The trainer of the opposite team was there, and she was a little thing, and she was trying to get it back in. She was holding my wrist, and she had her foot on my chest, and she was pulling it like she was trying to free the sword from the stone, and it wouldn't go. And I was yelling at her. I'm like, do you not understand the human anatomy? Put my shoulder in!
Yeah, that's amazing.
But it wouldn't go in. So I had to go.
What was your pain level like in that moment? Just curious.
At that point, it hadn't gotten really bad yet because I was still the adrenaline was still there. It just, when your shoulder is dislocated, it feels as if your head's on backwards.
Yeah,
it's a very awkward feeling
for sure,
and it's very helpless because you're just like, somebody help me,
Yeah,
and so
I've got a great shoulder dislocation story from the NFL that was similar.
Yeah. So they couldn't get back in, so I had to get in the ambulance and go to the hospital to get it back in. And so my dad rode the ambulance with me because he was there. And I was all right, but I was still in my gear and stuff. And then we get to the hospital, and before they put it back in, they got to x-ray it. So we got the pads off and stuff, and so by now it's starting to stiffen up, and it's really in bad shape. So we go through the whole X-ray process, like stand up, sit down, move around, and I'm
still not back in.
Still not back in. It's still out.
Oh God, dude.
And so we finally finish the X-ray stuff. I get back in the gurney thing, and the X-ray technician guy is like, you know what? I don't know what happened. None of that went through. We're gonna have to do that again.
Oh no!
I'm like, fuck you, man.
Are you kidding me?
So we went through that whole process again. And that took a while, by then it was stiffening up and it was very painful. But then they put me under. I woke up with it back in, and everybody was around me. They put me under to get it back in.
Wow!
Because it was spasming. The muscles were spasming around it. Just wouldn't let up. And that kind of started, the decision-making process as to, do I get my shoulder surgically repaired?
Right.
Because I have my senior year coming up.
Yeah.
Or no, I have workouts. I want to be in the league.
Yeah.
And I can't be having a 4-month shoulder rehab right when that's happening.
Fuck no.
So I decided not to get it repaired, even though it was bad.
Yeah.
And so when I got signed to the Niners, though, I had to sign a waiver for that shoulder to be even let on the field at all, because they found it in their physical. They saw how loose it was, and I had to sign the waiver specifically for that shoulder, which means if I hurt that shoulder again, they can cut me. They don't have to fix it, because it's a problem coming in. And of course, that rookie year training camp pops out again with the Niners. And then I was trying to play on it, and I was just like, had it strapped up. And I ended up getting cut at the end of training camp. and having surgery on my own through my own insurance in that off season. And that was
brutal.
like, the shoulders are just, the shoulders just are relentless.
Well, even as a receiver, man, I used to see some of my teammates, the receivers, when they were dealing with these shoulder injuries, and you're putting this harness.
Oh God, horrible.
Like as an O lineman, man, you can make that work. You can do that.
Right.
But as a receiver, you're going up for balls.
No.
You need your arms like mobile, man. It looked like shit.
And if you throw your arms above your head to catch a ball and the ball hits the hand and it sends it back, it's so painful.
It's brutal.
But again, in college, I was not surrounded with pills. I didn't have opioids around. I had by then an affinity for the herb. I had realized that it was an important part of my life. I had met a lot of friends through that plant.
Yeah.
I had found a lot of relief through that plant. I had gotten through some traumatic events in my life through that plant. I had some tragedies with friends who had passed away unexpectedly, and I found that it was good for grief and good for not just pain, not just acute pain from an injury, but good with depression.
Yeah.
And so by the time I got to the NFL, I was ready for that.
You had really felt and experienced. You had a big experience of all that stuff.
Yeah.
Going into the league.
Yeah. And so I never really got underwater with the pills.
Right.
I saw them around.
Yeah.
But I don't even think I ever finished a bottle.
Yeah. Well, that's really, I think you're one of the few.
And but I do attribute that to being introduced earlier to something that was better suited for me.
Did you have any sort of understanding at that younger age, like medicinally, what was going on?
No.
You just did it because it made you feel good. It was instinctive.
And after the injuries I would be just chilling with that. Like I remember I cracked a rib in my first or second game at Menlo, and I was in bed for 3 days. I could not really move. I could barely even laugh or cough or anything or poop or jerk off. I mean, it was really hard.
Yeah.
And so I was medicating with the herb, man, and I was back at practice, and I played the next game.
Curious, at that level, what is Menlo?
Division III.
So do they not do random?
We never got tested once. No.
Really?
Never.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
So guys, if they wanted to, they could have been on anything they wanted to at D3 level.
You could do anything.
You can if you make it to the playoffs. Then apparently they test you.
Okay.
But we were pretty much able to do whatever we wanted. It was kind of a school. It was like a renegade school.
So fucking ridiculous. Like the hypocrisy. Is it because it's like Arizona, for instance, is an NCAA?
Probably more money.
Division I school. There's tons of money.
Yeah.
You
boosters it's just
Is it just more regulated?
I guess.
I guess it's more regulated.
Yeah.
I don't know. Yeah, because we were tested all the time. I mean, you couldn't.
At Arizona?
Yeah.
How often?
It was random. Some guys got tested more than others. I didn't get tested that often, probably once a season.
Right.
I was good for. We kind of had an in with the lady.
So you knew when it was coming?
Yeah, and she would kind of give us a nod of like, hey, guys, no more tests this year.
Right.
So that was cool. And that helped us out, especially in those early days.
So did you see widespread opioid abuse in college?
No. I mean, I really didn't. I think that was a much more individual, just a smaller scale. I think that, some guys, I'm sure, descended into the pills when they had some bad injuries, I don't think that's difficult to avoid. If you're a guy that gets hurt badly in college and, you were a starter and, you have something like an ACL tear and you have to have surgery and you're done for at least a year. I mean, it's tough. You don't have much guidance. You're out there on your own. Let's be honest. The football mindset encourages this fucking, warrior mentality of, toughness and rage and fucking all that shit. And the pills kind of became, one of these like terms of endearment, the pills. It was like,
what do you mean by that?
It's like part of, what makes us like warriors is like that we can get through this shit. Like this is the secret sauce, when I got to the league. That's how it sort of seemed.
The injections and
and like the Toradol shots and all the fucking.
What's fucked up about the league too is that the people who are showing you that are the older guys.
They're the older guys
who have been around and are showing you what it takes to be around for a long time, but their bodies are on the decline and they're breaking down and they're doing all these unnatural things in order to stay there.
Yeah, and things that really fuck your body up.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't start doing the Toradol shots until the back end of my career.
Dude, my rookie year.
Oh, you did?
My rookie year.
Yeah. I didn't even see it then.
It was a veteran came up to me, and I'm not, I was like, fuck, man, okay, that's what I got to do.
Yeah.
I'm about to start my first ever NFL, pro football game.
Right.
I'm like, jacked out of my mind. I'm ready to go, and this fucking 13-year vet comes up to me. He's like, you get your Toradol shot yet? I was like, what? He's like, you get the T train yet? The T who?
Who?
He's like, come on. And I'm like, all right. So I walk with him. We turn the corner, doctor's office. There's a line of guys with their fucking butt cheek pulled out. And the doc's just sticking them, one after another with the T train. And,
So did the doctor tell you what you were risking by having this injection?
Man, then.
If he did, you don't remember it.
Yeah, I don't think so. It was later when they stopped giving it out, because there was a period in my career for like the first 3 years it was still going. Mm-hmm. Toradol shots every game.
I think they're still there now.
Question.
I think they're still
Well,
going.
I think it's a team by team thing.
Right.
I played on 2 teams that once they decided that, both were not giving out Toradol shots.
Right.
And our team doctor in Jacksonville, he was very adamant, like, Eben, it's very serious. Like, we've really looked at it. This shit it really exacerbates. I think their biggest concern was that it exacerbates the prevalence of concussions.
Well, it thins your blood and it makes any bleeding you have worse.
Right.
So if you were to get a concussion that was bleeding in your brain,
it's really bad.
Very bad. Yeah.
And that's great. Good for them for making a move like that. But really, when it comes down to it, it's like you guys really want to look at player health and safety. It's like, let's start really fucking considering marijuana.
They're not in my mind when they say player health and safety, I chuckle a little bit, because are you really looking out for player health and safety when you're sanctioning ultra-violent contests and paying people to attack each other as hard and as fast as they can? Sounds like they're just.
So you're just saying the nature of it just excludes player health and safety.
In many ways, yes. In many ways, yes. It's like, fucking hit him as hard as you can. Hit him as hard as you can, but don't hurt him.
Yeah.
But hit him harder.
Don't hurt him.
Don't hurt him, but hit him harder.
Oh my God.
Smack him. You know what I mean? And so there's this like double speak happening where it's like, we want you to destroy him, but don't hurt him. You know what I mean?
Unfortunately, I destroyed some guys in practice a few times and had that talk from the coaches.
The what? Don't hurt him?
Yeah. Often.
Wow.
Yeah. A few times. And one of those, I really, I was back from this back injury, this back surgery I'd had. Felt great. Let's get into these NFL injuries, man. Let's get into the good shit, huh?
Go for it.
Well, I think I'd had a solid rookie year. Really, didn't have much. I had a guy thrown into my MCL, so I had an MCL sprain. I missed 1 week. Started 15 games my rookie year. Was pretty unscathed. Shoulder was subluxating. Come home. I'm training with my old high school trainer for 6 weeks. In the best shape of my life. Come back for year 2 in Jacksonville. Boom, that summer, fucking back goes in a Kaiser squat. So I'm dealing with this herniated disc.
What's a Kaiser squat?
The Kaiser. It's a Kaiser squat. Kaiser machines are these air pressure machines.
You take a dump at the hospital?
They're a lot like they're resistance training. We had these in Jacksonville, these Kaiser machines. They're all air pressure, and you could do different things, and so I had the back one. So I felt the disc herniate, and it was like somebody just exploded a tube of toothpaste like right into my right hip. And I was like, what the fuck was that? Like, I didn't know if I tore my fucking glute or my hamstring or what was happening, but it literally felt like I'd been ripped in half and put back together backwards.
Wow.
Like my torso was on backwards. After those squats, we go outside to sprint. We're doing sprints. Of course, I'm trying to beat everybody. I tear my hamstring. Come inside, limp my way back in, and they're like, oh, Eb, looks like you tore your hamstring. That's a bummer, 3 weeks from training camp. Because we were about to go on, those first few years in Jacksonville, we had like a 2-week break before training camp started. It was a little iffy. But
we used to have that break.
2 weeks?
I don't know, it was a week or two, yeah.
Really?
It was actually, I think it was like 3 weeks or 4 weeks.
Yeah, I used to hear the fantasy stories of teams like get the month off before training camp.
That's
we
right.
got like 2 weeks.
Yeah. I think it got shorter and shorter and shorter.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They want you there more and
yeah.
more,
Well, it
you
used to
fuck.
be back in the old days, they wouldn't even have any off-season stuff. They would come 6 weeks before the season started and just get in shape.
I know, and they'd have jobs and shit.
Yeah, they'd have actual lives.
It's crazy.
Yeah, it's weird.
It's a much different mentality, that's for sure, huh?
Yeah.
If you have something else to worry about your whole life other than football. So
you tore the hamstring 3 weeks to go to training camp.
Yep. I tear it. I go in there. They're
and
like,
you are in pain. How are you managing this pain, by the way? Were you taking drugs? Were you smoking weed? Were you?
I hadn't been tested yet, so I couldn't smoke weed.
Right. For those out there,
I was taking...
The drug testing is once a year. Once you get it, that's street drugs, quote unquote, which is where marijuana falls under, the street drugs, then you're good for the whole year. And typically that happens mini camp or training camp. So most guys who aren't in the substance abuse program are able to medicate with cannabis during the season.
That is correct. So, yeah, I hadn't been tested yet. I think I was taking... Cataflam or Indocin or something like that, and it was doing nothing because it wasn't really an inflammation problem. The problem was my disc had exploded and was oozing this toxic gel onto my sciatic nerve, and that was just sending shockwaves of pain down through my ass, straight down my hamstring, into my calf, all the way to my foot. And so I've got this hamstring, and then they're not, they start doing these tests. Our athletic trainer and the team doc he was in, and they start doing these tests where I lie on my back, and they're like raising my leg as high. Eb, tell me when it hurts. And I'm like, fuck, that hurts. I could get it about 4 inches off the ground.
Right.
So they're like, oh, yeah, looks like you herniated the disc there. And I was like, oh, so what does that mean? What are we going to do? And so they're like, well, Eb, it's going to be a lot of core work. It's going to be a lot of stretching. It's going to be a fucking miserable year. And I was like, well, all right. And so it was a ton of like abs and core work, a lot of stretching to just nauseating nths of the universe, like, stretching. And the problem with the sciatic pain and herniating the disc is you wake up some days and you feel fine, like it's gone. And then you wake up other days and you can't fucking move. You can't even put your pants on.
And there's no rhyme or reason to why that happens.
Yeah, it's like it's a matter of millimeters inside your body that are,
Right. And let's paint the scene in the training room. What's an NFL training room look like?
So in Jacksonville and in Chicago, you walk in and it's a pretty visible room. There's like a lot of glass and you could see in. There's tables everywhere. And next to each table, if you can imagine like a massage table, right? It's a little bit more sturdy
bigger.
than that. It's wood usually.
Storage underneath with towels and things.
Tape and
right.
Biofreeze and all kinds of creams and shit and
salves
and shaving cream and fucking razors.
Did they have a hot tub and
cold
tub?
Hot tub, cold tub.
Steam room, sauna?
A workout pool.
Yeah.
There's a steam room and a sauna. Then you've got the weight room is very close to that usually. So, because they know when you get hurt, walk your fucking ass right into the training room.
And it's so
have
funny.
Them take a look at you.
It's so funny. Training room in training camp, for example, is packed with dudes.
Yeah.
And it's just like an
Packed.
odd scene. The most physically fit, dynamic, powerful members of our species are just limping around, hopping from table to table, having doctors poke and prod them that you were just describing, testing their range of motion. Are you better yet? Are you better yet? Are you better yet?
Taping up things.
You'll have 15, 20, 25 guys.
Testing out braces.
Yeah.
Like on knees and elbows and...
Right. And let's just remind everyone... remind myself that these guys are badass dudes who have been dealing with pain their whole lives, who don't need medication. They don't need pain pills. They've been dealing with pain since they were kids, high school, college, football players. They're tough. But here come the drugs because...
It starts breaking down.
Here comes the drugs because also it's about the timeline.
Yeah.
Because drugs come in when the timeline is not being met.
Right.
If they tell you 2 weeks and you're not out there in 2 weeks... then out come the drugs to get you out there.
Well, that's not part of the... I mean, they can't help you unless you're taking the pills. You know what I mean? I mean, I can't even tell you how many times...
If you're not willing to take them, you mean then you're not a company guy. You're not willing to...
Hey, man, you're not taking the first step we gave you here to get better.
Right.
You know? And so... You know, every guy is on some prescription of Cataflam or Indocin. I was Cataflam until that really wasn't enough. And then I switched
that's
to
an
Indocin.
anti-inflammatory?
Yeah. These are like, you know, pharmaceutical grade anti-inflammatories.
Those I never saw those. I saw like Celebrex, Vioxx,
Celebrex.
those ones.
Yeah, well then those started, you know, people are having heart attacks.
And they started
Celebrex.
pulling those off the shelves.
So yeah, you know, those faded out and these faded in.
Which is just like Coke, Pepsi, Dr. Pepper type of thing.
You know, and I think that's probably a team-to-team deal. And then there were opiates like before and after games. And sometimes if you were in bad enough shape, you know, in training camp, you start taking some Vicodin or some opiate, one kind of or another. Where were we though? Let's get.
We're talking about your
track.
Injuries. You going into that training camp injured.
Yeah. So I get into this rhythm, right? So let's say that break ended. It was nice. It was a family break. You know, you try to enjoy it, but how about that? How about that mentality when you're on break right before training camp?
Yeah.
Trying to enjoy some peace, knowing the chaos and the battle that's lies ahead of you.
I remember laying on a beach and like trying to appreciate it. And, like,
to just
my heart's
enjoy
like
it.
racing, thinking about it. You know,
you can't. It's crazy. It's fucking. You're preparing. Your nervous system is preparing you for battle. Really.
Yeah. Real quick, the whole thing about like how great it must have been to play in the NFL. What people always say, you don't really appreciate it like that. You're not like, this is amazing. Like I feel so great to be here. No, you're fucking fighting for your life every day. You don't look around and think, wow, this is so cool.
How lucky am I?
Right. Never.
This is wonderful.
So anyway, you're in the training camp and you're dealing with a severe injury.
I'm just fucking. I'm in there at 6 a.m. I'm up at 5 in the training room. You know, before 6, getting warmed up, getting in the hot tub, getting in the ice tub, just getting my body to a place that I can start stretching. You know, and then I'd go and I'd start getting my stretch in. I'd usually probably hit up my main dude trainer, Justin, and he'd give me like some massage, some Graston, like something to loosen up my calf and my hamstring and my glute, because with this back injury, all this shit was starting to atrophy. And it wasn't, you know, I was like getting knots in there that weren't, you know, that were being created by the weakness and all the, what do you call it? I was constantly having to compensate my body in different ways. So
you get thrown out of whack really easily because of what you're being demanded to do out on the field. If you have one little thing that's off, one weakness, boom, it fucking, it spider webs through your body.
Yeah, very quickly. You learn your weaknesses really very rapidly out there because you're, you know, constantly in a battle with another person who's like a mirror, really.
And then when you see how vulnerable you can become when you're not healthy.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's a very humbling and horrible feeling to be out on that field and be vulnerable.
Incapable.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's sad.
So I'm in there, before the sun is up, man, fucking doing everything I can to get loosened up. I've probably popped a pill or two by then, an Indocin or a Cataflam. And I'm just like I'm getting my routine, and I'm getting myself ready to go and doing what I got to do before meetings. And then, as you know, training camp, we good?
Yeah, we're good. Just checking.
Yeah, for sure. Training camp, it's nonstop. It's brutal. And I was just in this process of getting my back right and getting my core strong and making sure I was, working on my flexibility so that I could just get out there to play. And that was it was the beginning of a really bad part of my career. This back thing really fucked me up. It took the life out of my right foot. I couldn't feel it on the floor most days. And so I'm battling through that day after day, week after week, and we get to like week 7, and we're playing the Kansas City Chiefs. And I'm on, at this point, this is like almost 2.5 months of this regimen of core exercises, stretching, these early mornings, pills. At this time, I started taking Adderall because that was helping me get my nervous system going and get my feet firing.
Did the trainer or the doctor encourage you to get on Adderall?
No.
You asked?
That was me. That's another story that we could talk about maybe on another podcast, but that was before a Monday night game. And I was so depleted. I was so emotionally and physically depleted from this whole thing of, just constantly getting myself up and getting my body ready and, my back. It's just, it's the back and the sciatic shit are debilitating injuries, because they're just a constant, unless you get it fixed, which I hadn't done. I chose not to have a back surgery, to have this disc, that piece sliced out so that it would take the pressure off the nerve. I wasn't going to do it yet, So here I am. It's like week 7. It's my birthday week. We're playing the Kansas City Chiefs. I'm taking opiates before the game. I'm taking like Vicodin,
Adderall as well before the game.
Adderall and Indocin or Cataflam before the game, and a Toradol shot. Go out there playing the Chiefs. I'm at that point I had kind of built myself up, and I was getting ready to salvage the season and make it into a solid year that I played hurt through and fucking just really battled through. And it's like right before it's sometime in the second quarter, and we're on a touchdown drive, and it's an outside zone, and they play that 3-4, so I'm blasting through this defensive end up to the outside linebacker, handing him off to the guard, and Derek Johnson, linebacker for the Chiefs, you know him, right? Mm-hmm. We played against him. He comes flying downhill, sticks his helmet right in my collarbone. My legs get tied up in the chaos. I go down, land right on that arm at a 90-degree angle. I feel something weird, something jars. When I get up, I'm like, oh, fuck, my shoulder's out of the socket. So I just popped it. I rolled it back in. I'd been through enough of this with my shoulder subluxating and all this shit since high school. I was like, oh, fuck it, dude. I'm just going to pop this thing back in. We had 2 more the next play we scored. I come off the field. I say to my trainer, I'm like, yo, brother, I need one of those harnesses. My shoulder just dislocated. I got it back in. It's all good, but we're going to have to go out there for our 2-minute drill in about 2 minutes. And we have about 30 seconds till we're going to do this. And he was looking at me like, I think I need to get the team doc, dude, to take I was like, dude, we don't have time. You got to get me the fucking harness so I can get back out there.
And by the way, these conversations that happen on the sideline in that manner are frantic and fucking there's
crazed.
So much adrenaline down there. Oftentimes people want to know why doctors and coaches can't make the right decision to pull a guy out when he's actually hurt. It's because the adrenaline, it's like a war down there.
I was like, dude,
come on, we don't have fucking time.
Go get me the motherfucking shoulder harness,
and
dude.
when you, Eben, 6'6", 330 pounds are telling a small intern to get you the shoulder harness.
He looked at me, turned, and went and got the fucking shoulder harness.
Right.
Ran back. We're strapping this thing on. You know, we throw my pads off, throw them on. It's like a fucking wheel change in NASCAR. Throw this shoulder harness on. I get back out there in perfect time. I'm running on the field for this 2-minute drill with this harness on, feeling like a fucking badass, right? About to score another touchdown. 2 plays in, Mike Vrabel's rushing me. Swipes my right arm, totally dislocates. Now I've got the harness and my shoulder out of the socket. I can't get it back in. When the ball gets completed, everybody's running to the next play, and I'm like running off the field, like, because I can't get it back in the socket this time.
Because the harness is actually holding it out.
The harness is holding it out.
Yeah.
Okay. So they see me running off. They send a guy in, subs coming in. I come over to the sideline. They're like, "What's going on?" I'm like, "My fucking shoulder's dislocated." And they're like, fuck. Can we get you inside? I'm like, "No. You're going to get it right here. Get the fucking thing back in." You know, and there wasn't any pain. It was uncomfortable.
Do you think that's because you were on the Adderall and the opioids and the Toradol and that Adaflan? Or is that what it is? Cataflan. Or was it the adrenaline or just the combination of it being in wartime?
Yeah, I think it was everything.
Right.
You know, it was all of that stuff. And it took 3 docs like 2 or 3 minutes. Finally, they got it back in. I could feel the bones just grinding back in. They're like, "All right, man, well, let's get you into the locker room, shower up. You could change into some sweats. I think you're done for today." It's like, all right. So go in. I get some pills. They give me some pills because, of course, you're going to be in pain following that injury, which, yeah, you are, but I don't know if more pills were necessary.
Right.
I definitely took them. I got into my sweats. I threw a huge dip in. That's a tobacco dip, which I did for through my whole football career, which is awful for you in case you're wondering, anybody.
But it's part of the way that you get through meetings.
It is. It was a huge
the rigmarole of football, daily life.
It was a big part of how I got through the daily sort of grind. And, it's like a communal thing. Yeah. Guys will sit down. Let's have a dip together.
Yeah. Sunflower seeds.
So I go back out there. I'm in I've got like a shoulder thing on, a sling on. And I'm like, yeah, all right, well, this game's over, but I'll be ready next week. In my head, I was I'm going next week for sure. Yeah. Dallas, I'll be ready to go. And we ended up losing like 42-21. It was a pretty bad loss. Although it was one of those games where we had to fly in a quarterback that week, Todd Bowman, who's a total badass, like 20-year vet. I think he played with Favre on Green Bay. Like he's amazing. Fly this guy in for the week, and he started on Sunday. Hadn't been there in training camp. He was there like the couple of years before. I mean, but that's the kind of amazing shit too. Those amazing stories that are happening in the NFL all the time. This dude was literally on his farm in fucking Iowa. Gets a call. "Hey man, you want to come start for the Jaguars this week? We're playing the Chiefs." And he's like, "Fuck it, all right."
Yeah, you want to make $100,000 this week?
Yeah, because he's such a vet at that point. I mean, your minimum's like $1 million or something like that.
Yeah, it depends. Yeah.
So he comes back and he started and he did a great job, Todd, but we lost the game and that was a fucking bad injury. I go into the locker room fully expecting to just, get ready for next week, in my head. And the team doctors say, "Hey man, that was a full dislocation. I think that's going to be pretty bad. The torn labrum. I can't clear you to play. You're going to have to have surgery." So I thought that was really interesting, something you said, and it reminded me of, as a college athlete, what do you do in these situations when you get hurt and you're faced with some severe injury? I mean, for me in the NFL, it was, you're going to have surgery. We're paying for it. You're going to go have surgery. You're one of our pieces. So we're going to get you fixed and we're going to bring you back and you'll be ready to go next year.
Oh yeah. You don't have much choice there.
You're
their property.
Yeah.
They drafted you. That means that they chose you to come here, and now you got to do it, or else, like you said before, if you don't take the pills that they tell you to take, you're not the guy they want around, because those trainers are going up and they're talking to the head coaches, and they're letting them know how hard you're working to get back out on the field. And what that means is, are you following the rehab protocol? You know? So you had surgery and your season was over.
I was put on IR.
And what kind of medication did you take during that process? After the surgery?
I was definitely deep in Vicodin, or whatever they gave me. It was some opiate, and I remember so vividly taking these pills, and it was my most vulnerable. I need someone to fucking dress me. In that case, it was my mom, and I can't do anything. You've gone from like the top of the fucking mountain of your life to, you can't even put your shoes on yourself, and I remember taking these pills, and all of that seemed so much worse. It was like someone cranked up the fucking rage toggle in me, and it was everything. I was like on a hair trigger, even I remember with my mom, she'd be trying to help me with something, and I'd just be getting fucking pissed off. And there was a voice inside. I don't know what it was, but it was something like, man, whoa, who is this? Like, what is this? What's going on? Because, I don't feel that way about my mom. I don't want to be, and then I'd feel really awful about that. And I realized that it was these pills. Every time I took them, it made me just so fucking on edge and angry. And it didn't help me sleep at all. At that time, I was I got a recliner in my living room, and I had a recliner. I went deep into Adderall. I was taking painkillers. I was smoking weed.
So let me ask you, the Adderall kind of makes you, it makes you want to get up and do stuff, right?
Yeah.
And so how did that play with you trying to relax and rest and rehab?
I was up organizing my DVD collection by director.
Director.
I was doing a lot of writing. I was doing a lot of thinking, a lot of writing. I organized my DVD collection by director.
That's amazing.
Some people think I'm fucking nuts.
Well, that's what Adderall will do for you.
Exactly, right? So,
and the loss of identity in the process.
So I get put on IR, and I'm just like, I got no fucking idea what I'm going to do with myself, I'm waking up, and I'm getting to the facility at about 8 a.m. when meetings start, so I'm like not seen by anybody.
You're a ghost.
I wasn't seeing my teammates. I was just going in there and getting treatment.
That's by design.
And having talks with Justin, and we'd we'd go into our philosophical debates about, outer space and the cosmos and all kinds of different shit. Even alternative healing practices, interestingly enough. Justin was a really awesome dude. I appreciate it.
So what we need is to get those guys who are familiar in that medical system, the former trainers, those doctors, to come out and talk about this and what they've seen and what they think. We never get any of that. Why is that? We never get anybody within the medical apparatus of the NFL talking about ways to improve it.
It's the protocol, man. I don't know.
Well, that's why the Pain Project exists.
Fucking A.
Because we're here to tell our stories. You've been listening to some of them. We could go on forever with this stuff, but we're approaching an hour. We're going to save some of them for later.
All right.
For other times. I think that's what do you think? What do you think, Jed?
I don't know. It's up to Jed. Jed's the producer. How much time?
Yeah. Well, we're almost at an hour right now.
I think we're good for today.
Yeah, I think that's good.
Okay.
We're going to get to all these.
Yeah.
You know what? The funny thing about injuries in the NFL, they're all different, but they all sort of start to mirror themselves in the way we treat them and the way you start to get looked at by the medical staff, by the coaches, and the way the career arc goes. And when you're on the back end of it, how everything starts to just feel I don't know. You start to sense the inevitable.
You start to spiral into isolation and fucking all of that shit,
And thank God we were able to get out of it. And now
no doubt.
We medicate differently. I know I do. I don't have any pills, no injections, nothing. I don't even take Advil anymore.
Nope.
0 pills.
Yeah.
And it feels good. I feel like I have my body back, my mind back. Certainly I have pain. I have things that pop up, my old injuries. When I try to do something a little too aggressively, like I played basketball last week and I got a little too excited, the next day my back was fucked up. And I spent the next couple of days kind of dealing with a little bit of a fucked up back and a little bit of a imbalance. But these are things we can manage if you understand your body and you're listening to it and paying attention to it and facing the pain. You can't face the pain with opioids. You can with cannabis. It allows you to face it and confront it.
That's right.
So, for Athletes for Care, my name's Nate.
I'm Eben.
We out.
Peace. Thanks for listening to the Mindful Warrior podcast, brought to you by Athletes for Care, a health and wellness resource for athletes of all ages. Don't miss out on Nate's books, Slow Getting Up and Fantasy Man. Be sure to check out BringTheHurt.com, a pain advocacy platform dedicated to alternative healing practices. Visit BeTrueOrganics.com for all of your CBD needs. Use promo code BRITAIN, all caps 10, for a 10% off discount.